We are outside the White House waiting.
I'm just really excited. I've been looking forward to going to the White House this whole trip. It's my favorite part, so I'm excited. Yeah.
I think I'm looking forward to seeing the White House the most and meeting Admiral Rochon because he sounds really interesting. I'm Susie.
Hi, Susie.
Hi, I'm James.
James.
I'm Noah.
Noah.
I'm Brittany.
Brittany.
I'm Benjamin.
Hello, Benjamin.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Jim.
This is the most patriotic I've felt in my whole life. I'm very excited to be here. There's a lot of history in this building.
First of all, I want to welcome you all to the White House. I remember when I think about it, I go back, my first White House visit, and I had no clue that when I toured this house at 6 years old, that one day I'd be running it many years later, not in my wildest dreams. But I want to welcome you all here. It is such a thrill for me to have you back again. How many of the Hawks volleyball stars we have here? All right.
Whoa. We have a good chunk of the girls team and the boys team. The girls went to the semifinals of the state championship this year, so this is a tough bunch of gals.
Yeah, outstanding. That's good. But I just want to, on behalf of the president, I mean, you know, he's a little busy today. He's got little things like Afghanistan and Iraq and the economy and all kinds of other things, healthcare that is going to occupy his time. But this is particularly special for me to be, I look at clearly from the school that you come from, that these are the future leaders of America. Who can say in high school, any middle school, is all high school? Yeah. Who can say in high school that they go around and interview Bishop Desmond Tutu and that whole list of people in Congress? You've already had a few days with them, right? And you have more left to come.
Yeah, 4 days up till.
Yeah, there's nothing to me more wonderful than to really be in front of these folks and be in this house and be able to experience it firsthand, particularly walking through this house. Sometimes I forget about it every so often because I'm so busy trying to keep it going that I may not just take time out and always say, wow, look where I am, until you all show up and I see your faces. And I'm certain that you have a few mixed emotions going through you right now about being in the family theater where they watch the Super Bowl and all the other movies. As you notice, this is all set for tonight. So the first family is coming in to watch a movie. Because as you know, they can't go out to the theaters anymore. Life for the president and his young family has changed forever. There's just no way they can just hop in the car and say, let's go see a movie. So we have to have everything here for them to enjoy and have some sort of resemblance of a normal life. Mrs. Obama tries very hard to make sure her two girls, Malia and Sasha, are well grounded. And I'll share some things about you that I wasn't able to share with the last group because they was doing a different administration. But this group, this family is, as all of our families are very, very special. And there's one thing you may hear me say a couple of times today, and that's in the position I'm in and my other 95 people, we're into public service. And whoever comes in the White House, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whoever it is, they're all treated the same by my staff. The East Wing and the West Wing is totally different. Those are political appointees. My staff in the middle, in the mansion, are the ones that go from one president to the next. I have one guy that's been here through 9 presidents. He's been here for 51 years. I just retired a guy last year that was here for 61 years. Started with President Truman, if you can imagine that. They have staying power, I would think, right? But we understand one major focus. Our goal is to make sure that we provide the care and comfort and privacy for the first family. So we don't talk politics in the mansion. We stay away from that because we save that for the voting booth. Everyone has that right, but when we're in the walls here, we don't get into politics at all. And to me, I think that demonstrates with the staff here, there's a reason for that, because every president needs to feel that they can trust whoever's in the House, that we'll meet every need that they have. And I try my darndest, one way or another, whether it was with President Bush, who hired me, or now President Obama. With the president, to show you he's still a regular guy, a normal guy, although he's the leader of the free world. When we take our little morning walks over to the Oval Office, because I'm the first one to greet him off his elevator every morning, and which is, oh wow, think about it, it's pretty awesome. And walk with him through the residence, through the West Colonnade, the famed colonnade where you see all the presidents walking through the columns. And then I let him off at his Oval Office. But when he's not busy on that BlackBerry and you can tell it's a casual walk, we can talk about certain things. But to show you how down to earth he really is, here's the leader of the free world. As we walk over, stop and say, oh, Admiral, by the way, you know my girls have grown in the last year. They've gotten quite taller. Can you see if you can adjust the swing set a little bit? Because Malia's legs are really quite long, and we want to make sure that she can swing comfortably. And you know, it just really kind of brings you back and says, wow, this guy can take some time out and worry about what might be very minor on a scale of what he has to deal with every day and still think about his family. President Bush was the same way. You know, he adored his twin girls, and he adored his little puppies, Barney and Beasley. So, you know, they all still are quite normal people, regular people that worry about some of the things that you and I worry about on a regular basis. And we forget that because we think, you know, it's the President of the United States. But, you know, he's concerned about the children. As far as being grounded, there is a difference between the two administrations and having young children in the house, which I think is delightful because my office is located right between the state floor, which you'll see the most formal part of the house, and the private residence. President Truman built a mezzanine level, which he built just for the Chief Usher. And so I can hear the piano lessons coming down the staircase. The girls are off to school, they won't be back, but Mrs. Obama is very protective of them and their privacy. She doesn't like cameras on her children and that sort of thing. But she does want them to grow up as normal as possible. And one of her directions for me, or request, she says, Admiral, she says, love my children, but don't spoil them. She says, I want them to make their own beds every day. I don't want the housekeepers making up their beds. They have all the comforts right here because it's pretty embarrassing when you have a father that shows up at your volleyball game with 40 SUVs, you know? And so you can't travel everywhere. You can't go shopping like you all do on a normal basis, or the movies. So we have the movie theater, the tennis court. I was able to convert into a dual-purpose tennis and basketball court because the girls and Mrs. Obama play tennis, and the president, as you know, is quite an avid basketball player. So for a week, he was after me. Actually, 2 weeks. He says, Admiral, how's my hoops coming? And this is right after he got here. And I said, sir, they're coming soon, but you know, we're trying to work on making sure it's done ethically correct and there's no problems with donations. And next day, Admiral, how's my hoops? I said, we're working on it, Mr. President. But the last day, when I knew the hoops were going to show up, beautiful, high-end, Spalding, collapsible basketball hoops, NCAA, NBA. basketball hoops, the best of the best. And he says, Admiral, how's my hoops? I said, Mr. President, they're going in at 11:30 today. At 11:25, he was out there popping strings from the three-point line consistently. He was quite thrilled. So we have white tennis court lines and yellow basketball lines. And it just so happens that the tennis court is the exact NCAA, NBA size basketball court. So all that worked out. Now, I don't know what you all plan on doing individually with your lives, but I do want to put a plug in for public service. Some of us, even myself, can make a lot of money elsewhere, although paycheck's not too bad. But we can make money elsewhere. You know, I put 36 years in the military and probably could have landed a couple other jobs, but my first 36 years, particularly the first 5 of them, in fact, the first year I remember very well, was $150 a paycheck. That's every 2 weeks with a wife and a child. And you say, well, why do you stick around and make that kind of money? And, you know, simply it's public service. It's serving my country in uniform. And it got better because of what I did in the beginning in paving that way and getting my education out of the way, doing what, not just my job, but trying to exceed. I wasn't in competition with the next person. I was always in competition with myself. I always wanted to do it better, one way or another. Another thing I always did was I never turned down a challenge. Sometimes I had butterflies, and I would say, geez, you know, am I capable? Am I able to do this? And I said, well, why not? But I may learn from it. So take it anyway and do it. And it's always 100% of the time turned out that it did make me a better person. And it put me in positions, not that I was, as you know, trying to become the director of the executive residence of the White House. I had no, in fact, I wasn't even trying to become an admiral, to be honest with you. Because I was enlisted first for 5 years, and the track record of enlisted making flag officer in the Coast Guard is, there's only 5 of us in the 200+ year history. So that wasn't even in my plans. But I always thought something was out there. And guess what? Even at my age right now, and even after retiring from the military, and now having a pretty, you know, significant job, I'm still thinking there's still something else out there that I haven't done yet or that I haven't accomplished yet. I have some thoughts. I always have plans. My wife even tell you I'm a real planner. You know, she wasn't thinking about her husband either, but I nabbed her. And we can talk about that story another time. And although this is a wonderful job, it's a wonderful thing to be in the most historic house in America. One day I'm going to have to move on. Maybe one of you here might relieve me. But I always looked at my life and taking on those challenges because I knew a challenge was simply an opportunity waiting for me around the corner. You know, that's all it is. And it has, I guess, not just enriched me, but it's given me an opportunity to give back to other people. My wife told me something the other day, and she says, you know, you've given so many tours of this house. You may have surpassed the visitor's office. Now, that's not quite true, because I don't show 5,000 people around, or I wouldn't have a job anymore. You all are special, and Mr. Ward here is pretty persistent. But giving these tours is not just, you know, to benefit, you know, me. I enjoy seeing the smiles. I enjoy seeing people excited about their history. And so I do get a lot in return for doing this. If you can walk away from here and say that you've had an awesome experience, that's all I need. I appreciate the plaque. I appreciate the photo. It's going to go on my wall. but the biggest gift you can give me is just to smile and walk out of this house and say that you've really experienced something really great. And so don't walk out of here. I'm not going to let you go unless you can tell me you have done that. I think the best thing is just to hear from you and the things that you want to ask me. And I'll try to come up with the answers as much as possible, but I'm going to speak from here, okay? So is that okay? We can start off there. Before we do that, let me just give you a quick little background of my job in the House, so that maybe that might prompt some other questions and what occupies most of my time here. I have, as I mentioned, 95 people that help me keep this place running. They're here, they actually on a day-to-day basis know where the President is, the First Lady, what time is her lunch, what's the menu, who are the visiting guests, the girls have sleepovers, who's coming tonight, who needs a car, how's the engineering plant running, what's the next event, what furniture and chairs need to go in the East Room for the state dinner, what needs to be stripped in the map room so the President can have a taping or an interview. All the workings in the House, those folks on a watch rotation, a shift. I have the executive chefs, the executive pastry chefs, the housekeepers, the operations folks that break down and set up the rooms all day, every day. I have my own flower shop, the curators, the calligraphers, the carpenters, plumbers, electricians, painters, engineers. I probably forgot one or two. And then I have access to 22 National Park Service master gardeners and horticulturists who keep up the 18 acres of grounds. And all of them, everyone on the staff is extremely, extremely dedicated. Some people think we're here for events. The social office, the social secretary plans the events. We execute them. But that's a small part, actually, of our time. Most of the time, it's just trying to keep the plant going. And most of my time is dealing with people. One of my favorite things. Sometimes it's, you know, a little touch and go. You think the White House is perfect. And you think that everyone here is just happy and cheery every day. They're all looking forward to getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Not quite the case. Human nature, it just doesn't happen. Even in the best house in the country and the world, you always have to deal with people issues. It just goes with the territory. And I kind of enjoy that. Some are a little tough. I can probably share some real serious challenges that turned into opportunity, right? But it's out there. But look, let's open up the floor to anyone that want to ask a question. I see you got those big books out. You're making me intimidated.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Lindsay.
Yes, Lindsay.
Last time the Mount Madonna students interviewed you, you said, "I have a very simple goal here. It is to always keep a smile on the First Lady's face." Is that still one of your main objectives?
That is my, you know, instead of creating this elaborate vision and all these strategic plans and goals, which we are creating right now, I always remind my staff when they sit in this room for our quarterly all hands meetings is don't ever forget that. You know, we see that. We see Mrs. Obama smiling like we saw Mrs. Bush smiling. We know we've hit the mark. We got an email, received an email yesterday. You know, the Mexico State dinner was Wednesday, and that was quite a day. I woke up at 4:30 and didn't get home till a quarter to midnight. And she sent an email out yesterday to me to please tell the staff. I mean, it was just a really sweet note that President Calderon and his First Lady were overwhelmed and actually mooned about how, over the moon, about how wonderful we rolled out the red carpet for them. And it's not just about putting on a good show, but you have the President of Mexico You have him leave here after having a magical state arrival with the Drum and Fife Corps on the South Grounds and 5,000 people, and the Marine Corps, President's own Marine Corps band, and all the troops and the cameras, and then to come into the residence and have a reception, and then come back that night in black tie and ball gown and have the most beautiful dining room that I've ever seen set up in the East Room, and then to be shuttled by a trolley, all 205 guests, shuttled by trolley to the lower panel of the South Grounds to this huge tent that had hanging baskets almost as wide as this room, and chandeliers and laser lights, and then Beyonce gets on stage. You know, how could you not wow the President of Mexico? And so the First Lady, her note, I could feel the smile in that note. In fact, the executive housekeeper ran into her before I did. And she says, Admiral, the First Lady was so appreciative, she was on the verge of tears, expressing how happy she was. But yes, as long as I can accomplish that, when I go home in the evening, because you know I only do half days here, 12 hours on an average. But when I go home and I can say that the smile was on the First Lady's face, then I said I had a good day. Thanks for that question. Yes.
Hi, I'm Emma.
Hi, Emma.
You kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but also last year, or 2 years ago in the interview that they had with you, you said that this house is made of limestone and sand, but it takes blood and flesh to make it work.
Yes.
And that really caught my attention. And I was wondering if you could say more about the importance of the people that make this
Jeez,
place.
I didn't know I said all those things last time. I need to review those tapes before I come in here with a group. But yes, there's a lot of hardscape around here, you know, stone and mortar and brick and wood. But the blood and flesh that I was referring to are those dedicated people. This past month, when I met with my staff, I laid out a list of to-do things after walking around the entire house and looking at the house like I was the President of Mexico and the guest of the first family, because I wanted to see what I thought they would see. And I saw a lot. I saw chipping paint and dirty receptacle plugs, and I mean, the house is gorgeous, but the things that you see every day, it does take, you know, blood and sweat and flesh and tears to take care of those things. But on a daily basis, there's so much going on, you miss some of those things. And so I put out this huge list that I wanted people to check off, including painting everything that didn't move. But I only have 2 painters, actually 2 positions, one is filled. But it wouldn't get done without that individual, that human being that's out there. And I always remember, in fact, I stopped him just this morning, and I said, Chick, you did an outstanding job this last month. And to see the smile on his face. Now, he complained in the beginning of the month, Admiral, how can I do all this? And there's only one of me. And you got this long list of things to touch up. So I took that to heart, got him 2 more painters. They got through it. But I know what it feels like when people don't give me feedback. Even if it's not, you know, a kudo or the best feedback, I want feedback. I want to know how I can make it even better and better and better. And as great as Wednesday night was, there's still room for improvement. I'm already thinking about it. But you think behind the scenes, and I try to get behind the scenes a lot in the kitchen, which I think we'll get a chance maybe to go behind the scenes and see some of the things that the public doesn't see. But to see that kitchen with 20 people in it, that's flesh and blood cooking that food. You see the painter, and you see Tony, the operations foreman, who sets up the hundreds of chairs every day. That's flesh and blood that's taking care of that. So no, this house cannot, it wouldn't even be standing today had it not been for people that went all the way back, including the slaves that helped build this house, flesh and blood, that became freedmen and became servants, and later on became the fine staff that we have now. I recognize my folks as often as possible. In fact, yesterday I was so thrilled with them. Rather than just send out an email, I went to every department to tell them thanks for just a great job. So,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Brittany.
Hello, Brittany.
Can you talk about what it was like to change over the residence from one administration to the next?
Yeah, oh yeah, it was fresh on my mind. It was pretty hectic. It was my first changeover. My predecessor was Chief Usher for 20 years, so he had been through at least, I guess, 3 administrations and the changeover. But I had to rely on my background of having, you know, procedures and processes and approaching it from the many years of leadership that I had when I was in the Coast Guard. But it was a very, not just a hectic day, but just like the state dinner, the preparation to get to that day. I had 100 people on board, not just my staff, but volunteers that come in. And leading up to that, we were able to assign people to different floors, different sections of that floor. There was someone assigned to the cross hall, the state dining room, the east room, the ground floor, the residence, second floor, the residence, third floor. We all had someone that I can reach out and touch and says, you are responsible for this area. And here's a list of things. But talk about a hectic day. In just 4.5 hours, we had to move out, pack up and move out one president and move in the next and his family. And you could not move in the incoming president until the other guy was completely gone. So the only time you could do that was when they all got in the limousines to go to Capitol Hill for the inauguration. And that's when everything started. Now we did pack up a bit of the Bush's things. Mrs. Bush was so incredibly organized that she had a lot of things that were shipped off or packed up, but we still had, they lived into the house, in that house until the day that they walked out on the north portico to go to Capitol Hill. And we couldn't touch anything. Toothbrush had to remain on the countertop, you know, the whole works. But the minute that limousine drove off the White House grounds, my team of 100 people went to work. And we had one side of the driveway with the Bush's truck, and the other side of the south driveway with the Obama's truck. And all the folks loaded out furniture and carried out boxes, while the other side was bringing in furniture and boxes, loading them into the China room, waiting so the whole room was, whole house was cleared of the Bush furnishings. And then the housekeepers went to work. And we had to shampoo. Now all this is happening in 4.5 hours. Shampoo, dust, general clean, the interior decorator. Each first family has their own interior decorator. He came in and he wanted some other things done. He wanted some paintings to go up and some paintings to come down because we wanted President Obama and his family to come into the house feeling that it was their home. So all of those things were changed out, and we were ready with the Obama's toothbrush and their things on the countertops, on the vanity tops, all of their drawers, clothes out of the boxes, folded in the drawers, clothes hung up in order in their closets, all ready so that when he came back after walking down the street from the parade, and they came back to the south portico, and they came through that door, I was able to say, "Welcome home, Mr. President," and knew that everything upstairs was taken care of. That was a good feeling going home that day, because again, There was a smile on Mrs. Obama's face. So, that answers it? Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Mari.
Hi, Mari.
So, the public and the media always focus on the political differences in the administrations, but I'm curious to know what you have seen that President Bush and President Obama actually have in common.
Wow, that's a great question. I can tell you first off, the first thing that comes to mind is they sincerely believe in what they're doing. And that transcends any politics. They're very serious about their work. I could see the intensity even in the mornings between the two that were very similar. President Bush was very focused. Their schedules were a little different. They both got up very early in the morning. President Bush got up early and went to the office early, like 6:30ish in the morning. President Obama gets up early, but his schedule is different. He gets an hour workout in the morning. President Bush and President Obama, the similarities, I can tell you right off bat that both of those presidents were clearly strong family people. They loved their wives deeply. They loved their families. When you look at President Obama and how he looks at those two little girls, just look at some of the photos when you go through. The love that you feel that comes from both he and Mrs. Obama is just amazing. And when you switch to the similarity with President Bush, with Jenna and Barbara, both of them were the apples of his eye. He adored when they came to the house. He loved when they came. I mean, it's just, their similarities, despite those politics, comes down to the human being. Some things I kind of hesitate in talking about too much because you certainly want to keep the privacy of those gentlemen. But I think if you just concentrate more on the individual themselves, you'll see that we all have those similarities, at least most of us, I think, either in the positions that those two guys are in. I can't say a whole lot about the gentlemen that you've interviewed in the last couple of days and the ones you're going to interview because I just don't spend time with them. But I would bet that you find, although you hear of one senator or one congressman straying off and doing things, the lion's share, the majority of those folks or probably have some really strong similarities. They may be really opposed to each other on Capitol Hill as far as the politics. But I bet when you go, you follow them home, there are people that have a lot in common.
Hi, my name is Soma, and I was wondering what the most challenging aspect of your job is.
You know, in comparison to what I've done already, I think sometimes it's, I've experienced a lot in my previous life. I mean, right now, you know about the huge oil spill disaster in the Gulf. And when I was down in New Orleans as the captain of the port, I had a major oil spill. Didn't come close to this one, but it was still 500,000 gallons. That was pretty challenging. To try to open up the river, clean up that oil, save the birds and the turtles and the wildlife. That was very, very challenging. You weren't thinking about your job, you were just thinking about doing your part, doing it right to get all of that mitigated. And then I move here and I think, well, wow, it doesn't come on the same level of a major oil spill, but it's just as important that the president's press conference goes just right, because what you see on camera is all over the world. And you can't have something out of place or something not in place for him on the scale of a major spill and setting up for the state dinner. Anyone else would say, well, that's no comparison. But it certainly is when you want that head of state to walk out of this house saying that I have a true friend in the United States. And so the challenge is making sure that I can motivate the staff to make sure that that happens. And although they're really good, they know their jobs, it still takes someone at the top to make sure that they stay focused. And as I mentioned to you earlier, you think the White House is just perfect, but my biggest challenge here is not setting up chairs and setting up, like for instance, one of my favorite things, which was a challenge, was relighting the outside of the White House. And it was fun, but I was challenged by Mrs. Bush to make the White House green and environmentally safe. And she says, cut back on the energy bills. And I want you to start off with the outside of the house. And I said, okay, now how do I go about doing that? Here's another challenge dumped on me. And I soon found out that it took 33,000 watts of halogen to light up all 4 facades of the outside of the mansion. Contacting the largest lighting company in the world, Musco Lighting, they were able, to make a very long story short, they were able to give me cutting-edge technology, state-of-the-art LED lights. So I went from 33,000 watts of halogen to lighting the outside of the White House with 4,300 watts of LED. It's still operating at 50% power. It cut the energy bills by 86%, which we'd like other government agencies to follow. So those are challenges, but I still would say, honestly speaking, that nothing is more challenging than dealing with some of the personalities, honestly speaking. Everyone is different, and if you try to put everyone in the same mold and say, you know, okay, I'm gonna make sure that everyone is treated the same, that's okay, but you got to go a step beyond that. You got to not just say treat them the same, but you treat them with equity, with fairness, and recognize that every 95 one of my people are individuals, and certain things motivate them different than other things. You can offer a pay raise to someone, but the one next to that person may say, that doesn't excite me. Treat me right, give me an understanding of what am I to do, the expectations, and I'll be happy with that. And someone else says, hey, that's just going to put me in another tax bracket. Give me some days off. Some people require other things, a little bit more attention. So I'd say the biggest challenge, or recognizing that you have 95 very different people, and you try your best to meet their needs as much as possible because you want them to be able to take care of the people here in this house. Okay.
Hi, I'm Erin.
Hi, Erin.
So last time the Madonna students were here, you talked about meeting the Pope and getting photographed with him, and also about meeting the Queen of England. You said those were very significant events, so I was wondering, since then, have you had any major moments?
Oh, yeah, there's been some major things. Those were pretty significant. You're talking about the Holy Father and the Queen of England, as far as leaders. I could say an easy answer is meeting Madonna School. That's pretty significant. But you know, there's some perks in this job too, and you get to meet some incredible people. One was spending an hour last year in a room with Stevie Wonder, you know, and just chatting with him and making sure things were just right before you went on the stage with the Gershwin Award and performed that night. And some of you folks might relate to this, but it was pretty nice meeting the Jonas Brothers too. They're pretty some nice guys. They're really some nice guys. Yesterday, I wanted to make sure that our star entertainer, not yesterday, but Wednesday, was doing well. And so in the map room, it was just Beyonce and I. There's been some nice things. Billy Graham, and taking him up to the second floor residence. And then when all these people show up again for events, you know, to get a big bear hug from Oprah Winfrey. That's pretty incredible, you know, and the kindest comments from Secretary Clinton whenever she comes to the house. And then meeting this man at his elevator every morning. You know, I get a significant event every day of my life. You're welcome.
My name's Jack.
Hey, Jack.
So while you were working full-time for the Coast Guard, you were also going to school, and you were a single father.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to know...
Well, you guys do your homework, don't you?
Oh, yeah. How did you manage all of that, and did it equal the intensity you feel you find here?
Oh, wow, that's really a good question. It was a real balancing act trying to manage all of that. One, sometimes at a detriment maybe, to a fault. I'm so much into my work that I have to admit, you know, I have to really work on making sure the rest of my life is equally going well. And I had a young son. I have a young son that I was left with at 3 years old. And he, to me, was my life. But in order to give him a life, I never lost focus that I had to give the Coast Guard 100% too. And sometimes the two didn't quite go together. And you do what you have to do. And there are some evenings where, I may have said this with the other group, that I had to sneak him on duty with me because I couldn't find a babysitter. And so he slept next to me in a single bed. You know, a little boy enough for me to turn the watch over to someone for 20 minutes and get him to school in the morning. I'm proud to say that he's a model citizen at 37 years old and doing quite well. And I kept my job for 36 years. So, you know, you just have to, and you always have to remember that there's other people out there willing to help you out and support you. So you can have a very understanding mother who took him on the summers and allowed me to really get into my job and not feel guilty in trying to rush home in the evening. That's important. But, you know, throughout my, your name again?
Jack.
Jack. Throughout, I guess, my whole time in the Coast Guard and now, I always kept in mind that I couldn't do it by myself. And some people try, and they won't share some of their trials and difficulties with other people. And I know there's still a lot of people like that, like me, out there now. And that's why I always try to make myself available to people. There's at least a couple hundred people out there who I mentor on a regular basis. Because all of us need somebody else. You just can't do this alone. I would tell you right now that I would not have made it without the support structure and reaching out. Now, I have a lot of pride too, and I like to do things on my own. But I know that bottom line, if I'm going to keep my job going 100% and taking care of my family, I just cannot do it by myself. But the second part of your question about you compared the Coast Guard and where I am now?
Just the bad balancing act, and what appears to be a balancing act here. The intensities were similar.
The intensity, that's the key word there. There are a lot of similarities in as far as intensity. I mean, this job here, again, comparing it with the Coast Guard, with spills and rescues and protecting the coast, that's a pretty important thing to do. Here, you just don't want to fail because someone else is impacted, and that's the President of the United States. So that's pretty intense. I do have to still balance that with my life at home. And I try to do that. I inherited another child, my 86-year-old mother, because of Katrina, was blown out of New Orleans. And now she lives with me. And so although my son is grown up and he's on his own, I still have my mother that now you have to put the eye drops in the morning before you go to work. And I'll share a little story with you. I get up, early in the morning, and before I leave, because she's 86, she can't do that quite as well by herself. So I have it timed just right. So you got to figure out your little routine. And I walk in, first I do my shave, get my shower, get my shirt and my pants on, but I save my tie until after I give her a second eye drops. So first eye drop goes in when I have my shirt on. I say, Mom, knock on the door. I said, it's time for your eye drops before I go to work. Get that little eye drop in. Then I go change my tie. So I got it so timed that I know it's the right moment to go back and get the second drop for me to then dash off to get to the White House. But I remember way back a year and a half ago when the election results were in, and I stood up all night, like I think a lot of people in America did, trying to see who was going to be the next president of the United States. And my poor little mother could not hang. She went to sleep. And the next morning, going to do those little eye drops. I was a little late for work because I knocked on the door and I woke up and says, Mom, ready for your eye drops, but we have a new president. And she sat up in bed and she says, really? I says, yeah, and his name is Barack Obama. And she says, oh my God, the world has changed. That reminded me more that, people like that in your lives, you've got to find a way to balance between your work and the intensity that you have at work. You cannot take it home. When I get in that car out there, that's the first parking spot, I'll just let you know that. When you get in that car, you have to leave that intensity and the things that you deal with here and not bring it home. Because I do have a wife that I need to give time to, and I have a mother, and I have 8 grandchildren that I have to take care of. And they're all here in the D.C. area, which is pretty neat. In fact, one of them is at the Coast Guard Academy. He's graduating next year. And I get the chance to go on stage, because that's the year that President Obama speaks to the Coast Guard Academy. All of the service academies swap every year. And through divine providence, this is the year he goes to the Coast Guard Academy. And tradition is the father or the grandfather or the mother or the grandmother who is once in the Coast Guard gets to go on stage and with the president and hand my grandson his diploma with me being in my uniform again. So it's a balancing thing to make sure that you never forget that family. And I'm not perfect at it. I was just reminded, Jack, just yesterday, when the state dinner kept me here so long. And my wife is incredible. She takes care of the home quite well. And she's a workaholic too. She works at Defense Intelligence. She retired from the Coast Guard the same day on the same stage with me. We both did, between the two of us, 73 years of Coast Guard service. And I got home really late, and the next morning we didn't talk about the major house renovations we got going on right now. New kitchen, new bathroom, new landscaping outside. And I had a lot to talk to her about, but I knew I had to get back to work first thing in the morning. When I came back home last night, I really felt bad because I didn't give her a lot of time. And I says, we need a date night. We need to just take a break. Like the President of the United States, if he can do it, I can do it. So you leave that intensity at work. It doesn't mean you leave everything, because it helps to go home and share certain things. But I always try to check it before I go in that door, because they don't get enough of me already. And what they do get, I want to make sure they get all of me and not the intensity that I bring home from work. Okay? Yeah.
So my name is Mara, and you've already given us some great advice, but we were just wondering, as you've obviously had a very varied and important and really cool career, and we were wondering if you could give us some more advice as people that are just trying to find our own path.
Be passionate in what you do, and love what you do. When you stop loving it, it's probably time to look for something else. Right now, I love my job. I have not regretted putting my all in anything, because I didn't know what was around the corner. But by treating what I like, you in school right now, your passion should be to graduate with as high an average as you can possibly squeeze out. You know, my young grandson, I had to give him some tough love, and his grades started going down. And he was the captain of the football team at the Coast Guard Academy. But your academics right now, your passion should be getting the best grades you can possibly get. Now, he's not a 3.9 student. I wasn't a 3.9 student, to be honest with you. But right now, he's doing pretty darn well. He's doing great. He had to put football to the side, and that was a very tough choice. But you got to remember what your purpose in life right now is not just the grades. That's part of it, but the experience of being in school and learning from those teachers. But you still have to think, what is your purpose right now? You know, right now I would love to do a couple other things. I may have told Ward this a couple years ago, that I've been working on a book, you know, for years. I have a burning desire to finally get to that. Well, since then, guess what? I pick up on a job like this, and there's another book I want to write. And then other people are asking me to do this, and I think, wow, that's an idea for a third book. And then I've got, since I love to cook, and now I'm getting a beautiful kitchen. Hey, that kitchen is kicking. You should see the plans. But now I want to write a fourth book. Well, I have to let something go eventually, but I can't write those because my passion is taking care of the President of the United States. That's why I exist right now. So I'd say, you know, I could probably tell you a lot of things, but, you know, leave you with that last little thought is to really get just into whatever you're supposed to be doing right now, and do it so daggone well that you can't believe the things that will come out of that down the line. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know what's going to happen when I leave here after putting my flesh and blood and my sweat into this house. What's next around the corner for me? Well, I tell you, I kind of got carried away the other day when the President of Mexico was coming into the Blue Room, which I'll show you. And one of my little jobs is always direct the head of state to the guest book. And the President brought the President Calderon in the Blue Room, and I guess he was just a little distracted. And he introduced the President of Mexico to me, but I don't know whether it was a fortunate slip or a mistake, but he says, oh, and Mr. President, this is Ambassador. I said, oh man, that sounds good. Maybe that's my future. So you just don't know, but you know, you just, I think about what I'm doing now and do it the best and exceed. I don't believe in just doing a job. I've always got to do it better some kind of way, because there's always room for improvement. And things just happen to come your way because people recognize that, your reputation. Someone asked me, well, how did you get this job? And I didn't apply for it. I didn't even know it existed. I had no clue what this job was all about. But someone recognized what I had been doing all those years up to this point. And when presidential personnel started putting out the feelers that President Bush wanted to go outside the house this time, because tradition all of my predecessors, the 7 or 8 folks before me since 1866, all fleeted up from the number 2 position to become the Chief Usher. This is the first time in history President Bush says, I want a fresh set of eyes on the House. And they said, well, how did you get selected? Why did they reach out to you? You know, I could give an answer. I think maybe even I mentioned it last time. It had something to do with divine providence. Well, that's part of the answer, Ward, that I gave last time. You know, I didn't know the rest of the story until I thought about it. I says, well, that's great that the man upstairs is kind of looking out for me, but he also expects me to look out for myself. And someone, a 3-star admiral who I used to work for, who was retired, found out that President Bush was going to be looking for someone, and he called him and says, stop your search. This guy is retiring, and you should call Rochon right now. And that could have gone a little differently, because the year before that, there was a major incident in New York Harbor with a vessel that was carrying a potential threat to the United States. And it was the way that that was handled that I guess it was recognized by this one person. I could have handled it very differently. And this guy, I remember before he retired, Admiral Tom Barrett, said, you know, you could have gone completely different and handled this thing so unprofessional. Instead, you took it a different way, and I really respected you for that. And I thought that was the end of the story. But he remembered how that incident was handled enough to say, stop your search, call this guy. So your reputation is what I'm trying to say precedes you. And what you do today, there's either consequences or there are rewards and opportunities based on what you do now. You can take a little slip up and have a few more beers and a few more drinks and crash into a tree, you know, and either take your life or get something on your record and that stays with you. You know, there are consequences behind what you do. And on the positive side, there are really some great things out there for the right things that you do. We all make mistakes. Well, I can tell you a whole bunch of them that I've made. You know, we are not perfect. And I'm the first one to stand up and says I'm not perfect. I've made some mistakes in my life. I tried not to make them so huge that I could not recover from them, that I learned from them. And I can think of someone that's very near and dear to me that did not learn and did make a mistake. And now the challenge of finding a job with a record, there's too many of you out here with clean records that are looking for work. And then you have someone that's, the heart's in the right place, but they made that one mistake. And now the last 10 years, he's been suffering from it because it's just a challenge trying to get over that hurdle and get someone to recognize him for who he really is and not for what he did way back when. It's working out, but it's a little bit tougher. So have that passion. Think about your reputation. Think about what you do today has some impact in the future. Okay?
Before we go, I just take a couple minutes just to sort of feedback. What's something you heard that struck you, that mattered to you?
Well, I really just enjoyed what you said just now, really, about, you said, don't just do the job. And that's something that I want to strive for in my life, not just to do something to get by and then just, you know, throw it away, but really just anything that I'm involved with, just giving that extra effort no matter what it is, and I just really respect that about you.
Thank you, thank you. It's going to pay off. As we say back in New Orleans, I guarantee. Yes.
I liked what you had to say about how it doesn't matter if a person visiting is a movie star, just a normal person, that you do your best to like make them feel like a human being and important, and it just goes to show what a good person you are, and I really appreciated this interview.
You're too sweet. Thank you. Thanks.
I really liked what you said about never forgetting to thank the people who keep things going no matter like where they are on the spectrum. But I think it's because it always makes me feel so much better when I get feedback that I've done something well, and it makes that much of a difference.
Even a little person, you see the housekeeper, mopping the floor, and you think, what can you tell somebody like that makes them feel good? But when you try it and you say, Bernard, man, that's the shiniest floor I've ever seen. And to see them beam and say, thank you, Admiral. It goes a long way. Yes.
I really liked what you said about family and leaving the intensity at work and coming home to enjoy and release the stress.
You need that. That's a battery charger. Yeah, to go back and get intense again the next day.
I really like what you said about like it's one thing to read about it, but it's one thing to live it. And I think that's something we all really need to keep in mind, because we can always take the safe route to reading about something or exploring through different ways other than living it, but it's so much better and so much more fulfilling if we just take the risks and live it.
That's really, really a lot to say there, because I don't know if you all realize, what you do in going around the world. You're living this thing all the way more than anyone. My high school, I think the furthest we went was on a picnic, to the next grounds. So look what you're doing now. You're sitting here in the White House, and before some pretty terrific people. So I'm glad that you're learning that. That's the way to really get it. Don't forget about reading, though.
I feel like the example you used when you talked about how you handled the situation on the coast in New York, and how that guy, to you it seemed like it was just a minor comment he made, but it ended up landing you this job almost, or pretty much. Yeah. I feel like that's something that SN's been trying to teach us this whole time, like these little interviews and how we act. It may not mean a lot to us, but it's how we got here, so.
That's right. Yeah, great.
All in?
Jack. I really like what you said about there's still something else out there for you, and also you always knew that life was just another opportunity waiting to happen. And I think that optimism really goes a long way.
Good, thanks. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. I'm humbled, and I want to pay you back by taking you on a nice tour.
Admiral Rochon is like the nicest person I've ever met, I can honestly say. And it was just amazing how everything in there had so much history, and it was just so priceless. Like I was this close to, a dish that President Washington ate out of, and I can't even explain it. It was crazy.
And once I open these doors or come through these doors, you're going to enter the original house that George Washington built.
The White House itself is like so inspiring. I mean, I love history. I don't really know a lot about it, but I love history, and just seeing our nation's history like in that house, so cool. So yeah, it was just overall a really breathtaking experience.
You look to the right, you'll see the famous painting that I mentioned of President Kennedy, where you don't see the eyes of the president. In a nice, beautiful oak wooden box with a glass top and a green felt cover over it is a very important document. And when I go in that room, I can peel back that cloth. This white building here is the West Wing, and that's actually the Oval Office and the Rose Garden. So we'll see that right quick. We can't spend a lot of time there. Beyond the holly trees there.
Admiral Rochon was very gracious and generous to us and really took his time, so it was something I'm never going to forget, and I really appreciated it.